In this video, I want to give you a few examples of finding the area of a triangle. And we're first going to start off with the formula. A is for area. So area of a triangle is 1/2 times the base times the height. So I'll go ahead and write that out. So area equals 1/2 times the base times the height. And again, when you see the letters next to each other like that without any operators in between, you can assume that that operation is going to be multiplication. Same with between this 1/2 and the base. That's going to be, we're multiplying. Now, it's 1/2 because the area of a triangle is 1/2 of the area of a rectangle. And I'll draw you a picture here if you're not able to see it. So we know that the area of a rectangle is equal to the length times the width. And so this part would be, we can call this the length and this the width. Although with a rectangle, it really doesn't matter which side is which. And if I were to cut this in half diagonally, like from here to here, I would have a triangle. Okay, so if I wanted to know the area of just this triangle here, that would be half of the area of the full rectangle. So there's a couple ways that you could write the area of a triangle. The one I gave you earlier, 1/2 times base times height. Sometimes you'll also see it as area equals base times height over 2. And that's because we're dividing the product of the base and the height. Now you might be wondering, well, why are we talking about length and width and then base and height? And that's just kind of arbitrary there. This point here, the bottom of the triangle is going to be the base. And then the height, in this case over here, it kind of goes along with the width. But again, just think of the height as being the top of the triangle, the line that goes from the tippy top all the way to the base. So it's perpendicular to the base. Okay, now let's try some problems. So again, area of a triangle equals 1/2 times the base times the height. And I'm going to draw a right triangle in this first example. A right triangle, remember, has a 90-degree angle. And we'll make this one a fairly easy one to start with. Let's say we've got 10 meters as the base and 4 meters as the height. So the key in solving or calculating with area formulas is to identify where these variables are in the picture or with the information that's given. I know that the bottom of the triangle is the base, so that's going to be 10. So 1/2 times 10. And then the height is going to be the 4 meters. Now I'm just using parentheses, but you could use a dot or you could use the X. I don't like to use X as a multiplication when I'm working with variables, just because I don't want it to be confusing. I don't want you to confuse the X as a variable. Okay, now we're just going to multiply across. Now I could write it out as 1/2 times 10 over 1 times 4 over 1. You can certainly do that. But, there's another way that we could work it out. We could just think, well, what's half of 10? Well, half of 10 is 5. and then multiply it by the 4, and we get 20 meters squared. So remember, when we're working with area, we want to square the unit of measurement. I'm going to give you a couple more. In this next one, the triangle is going to look a little differently. This is an isosceles triangle. The isosceles triangle has 2 equal sides. So these 2 sides are the same length. This third side is different. Now, it might be harder to see the height in an isosceles triangle like this one, but again, the height is going to be from the tippy top to the base. It's going to be perpendicular to the base. Perpendicular means there's going to be a 90-degree angle. Okay, and so this dotted line is going to be the height. And what you could do, since I'm using these fat markers, it's hard to see, but I'll go ahead and make some extension lines here, and this arrow here is going to represent the height. And the base, of course, will be over here from this end to this end. So the height and the base. Now I'll go ahead and give you some numbers. Let's say the base is equal to 9 feet. And the height is going to be 12 feet. All right, so again, you want to write out your formula. Area of a triangle equals 1/2 times the base. Oops, you don't have to put parentheses. Let me redo that. So 1/2 base times height. When we plug in the numbers, then I'll go and use the parentheses. So again, now we're going to substitute in our numbers and then evaluate. So the base is 9 and the height is 12. So there's a couple ways we can solve this problem. The first is to take half of 9, and if you want to do that mentally, that's fine. If you want to write it out, I'll go ahead and do that. So we've got 1/2 times 9 over 1 times 12 over 1. And with reducing, you don't have to take 1/2 of 9. You could take, you could reduce the 2 and the 12 together. That would be fine. And then notice the denominator is full of 1s, so we're going to multiply across. 9 times 6 times 1 is 54. So we get 54 feet squared. Now I did say you could write this out a different way or even do some mental math. I'm going to rewrite it here. Now, if you remember, when we talked about whole numbers, we talked about a property called commutative property, and that basically meant that when the operation was multiplication, we could change the order of the numbers. And so it's really easy for me and a lot of people to take 1/2 of an even number versus an odd number. And so if we do that, we can basically, in our mind, switch those around. We're going to get the same answer. 1/2 of 12 is 6. 6 times 9 is 54. So 54 feet squared. Now you could, in this example, we've got an obtuse triangle. Now the obtuse triangle has an angle that is greater than 90 degrees. And you can see the bottom of the triangle, again that's the base, and the height is going to be this dimension, which is from the top of the triangle to the base. All right, let's give you some numbers. Again, area equals 1/2 times base times height. let's make this interesting. Let's say the base is 7½ inches, and we'll say the height is 5 inches. Okay, so I'm going to plug in my numbers. Area equals 1/2 times 7½ times 5. Excuse me. Now it's kind of hard to just mentally do this problem in your head. So let's go ahead and do some calculating. We're going to change this mixed number to an improper fraction. So 1/2 times 15 halves times 5/1. Does not look like we can reduce. So we have to just multiply straight across. Now I know that 15 times 5 is 75, and 2 times 2 times 1 is 4. This, of course, is an improper fraction. Let's convert it to a mixed number. We're going to divide 75 by 4. I've got a 1 there. There's always a little math with just about everything. Let's see, 4 goes into 35 8 times. It's 32. And we get 3 left over. Now remember, we're going to take that 3 and bring it up here. That's our numerator. So 18¾ inches squared. And that would be the area of this triangle here.